At some point, this is going to work. There you go. At some point, you're going to question your existence. And I don't mean why or how did I get here? I mean, why am I here? Now, for me, my name is Kusko, and I am what's called an adventuring humanitarian. Get to that in just a minute. But it all started quite by accident, and it made me question, why am I here? You see, I had a very unfortunate experience not so long ago. I was a creative director in advertising, and I was full on living my purpose. Life was great, right? Until it wasn't. The economy turned, and when it did, I lost my job. But to make matters worse, that very same week, my car got stolen. And as I'm standing there, looking at this empty parking spot, I was probably thinking the exact same thing all of you would be thinking in that very same moment, right? Yeah, but it was a Subaru. Well, the universe wasn't done with me yet. Whoever stole my car drove to my house and cleaned me out of everything of value, everything. As a creative, that really meant computers and photo, video equipment, you name it, it was all gone. I had only identified as being creative. So in this moment, I was incredibly lost. Scared, in fact. Where do I go from here? And it really made me stop and think how I saw myself and how truly narrow it actually was. Now, it ultimately was just a setback, a painful one, but just a setback. But it set me on a journey of really trying to figure out, what is this all about? Why am I here? Well, when you think about it, when you think about the reason for being, you think about purpose. What's my purpose in life, right? And you wouldn't be wrong. I mean, after all, you start pretty young. You can probably remember when somebody said to you, what do you want to be when you grow up? You might even remember the answer. Do you know between the ages of 4 and 6, the top answers, in no specific order, policeman, fireman, doctor, teacher. And equal to those, superheroes. And it makes sense, right? Because to someone that young, they're looking at being bigger in life than they are. And someone that does good. Well, thinking about your purpose is very natural. What if there's one more step? What if we're not thinking big enough? I would suggest that we take one step beyond purpose and we think about impact. What's your impact in life? Let me explain. Purpose is the reason for which something is done or created or why it exists, right? That is a very inward way of thinking. It's very personal to you. But then there's impact. Impact is to have a strong effect on something or someone. Well, that is a very outward way of looking at your existence. It's how we connect to others. By rethinking the fact that figuring out our purpose is good enough, we can go beyond that and consider the fact that it won't solely serve us to only think about our purpose, that we also need to think about impact. Now, in terms of humanity, if purpose is why you are created, then I would suggest impact is what you're created for. How would you do that? Well, the simplified answer would be self-awareness and action, right? And that makes sense. But if you want to cause the biggest effect, you'd want to create a solid foundation, a conscious solid foundation for which to build from. I like to call that your impact power base. For no other reason then impact power base just sounds really cool. Okay, so your impact power base requires 3 things. It's your gifts, your purpose, and your passion. Let's talk about your gifts. These are your skills, your talents. Everybody has them, but they're individual to you, very unique to you, very authentic to you. No two are the same. You could have 2 phenomenal musicians and they will not create the exact same music. And some talents are pretty obvious, right? I mean, a stellar athlete, pretty much can tell stellar athlete. Some talents and skills may be not so obvious, critical thinkers, problem solvers. The objective here is really to identify all of your skills and talents. You've got more than one. I like to say that once you identify them, you put them in what I like to call your gift box. This is your resources, your personal tools that you'll use on this journey time and time again, and you'll evolve them as you go. You know, if you struggle to find what some of those gifts and talents are, you can always just use cues from other people. They'll tell you, right? Like, for example, what would be a good example? Yes, you totally remind me of Sheldon. You know Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, right? You are never gonna get laid, but my God, you're gonna change the world. That could be a cue, right? All right, you get the idea. Let's talk about passion. Now, passion is typically what you gravitate toward. It could be your activities, events, hobbies, or like me, it could be your career path. And then finally is purpose. Statistically, you are going to find your gifts and your talents with your passion into your purpose. And this is how it would typically happen. Your gifts and your passion work together to drive your purpose. When these 3 elements are there and present and you are conscious about it, this becomes your impact base. This is your strongest foundation to affect the greatest impact. Let me tell you a story that kind of pulls all this together. I think it's a pretty neat story, and it kind of ties it all up, right? Not to say I'm done yet, but just ties it all up. April 15th, 1947. The Brooklyn Dodgers sign a guy by the name of Jack Roosevelt Robinson to first base. In doing so, he becomes the very first African American to play in Major League Baseball. I mean, that's huge impact to the sport, right? But bigger impact to society at the time. We would know him as Jackie Robinson. He would later go on to say that a life is not important except for the impact it has on other lives. His undeniable talent, his passion for the sport, drove his purpose. If any one of those 3 things weren't there, the significant impact could have been lost. And who knows, he could have ended up being a tax accountant, and we wouldn't know Jack. Thanks for staying with me on that. All right, so discovering your impact journey can be ever evolving. As you grow as a person, life experiences, you just be open to the flexibility of it, but just stay conscious as you go. For me, finding that impact was a bit by accident. And it all happened as a double dog dare. Is everybody familiar with a double dog dare? It's like the worst kind of dare. I was going on a business trip to London, and right before I left, I happened to be talking to my dad on the phone. And he says, you know, you should try and get a picture with a Bobby, a London police officer. I was like, all right. He goes, no. I think you should creep up on him in a tiger outfit. And I was like, what are you, nuts? I'll get arrested. To which he replied, oh, yeah, probably. So I got off the phone pretty much saying, I really don't think there'd be anybody that is that crazy. Okay, maybe one. And that started tiger nabbing. I would tiger nab famous landmarks, points of interest, World Heritage sites, didn't really matter. And all I was doing was just posting on social for my friends, just to have fun. I didn't really think that much about it, but in the process, I realized something. There was connection. And in connection, I would meet random strangers. Here's the thing, they didn't see me. They saw a tiger. But they didn't see a race, they didn't see a religion, they didn't see a gender, they saw a tiger. And by golly, they were gonna hug that tiger. Hard. Sometimes too hard. Well, that became the start of Happy Tiger Tales. Very unintentionally. As a middle-aged woman dressed as a tiger, going through a midlife crisis. Not exactly my plan. But in that, there was connection and happy moments. And it was at that time that I became more of an adventuring humanitarian. And it made me wonder, what would it look like if I was intentional? If I actually designed the next steps of the Happy Tiger Tales saga, what would that actually look like? So I created an adventure race to go around the world in 28 days. My plan was to post clues on Instagram, not tell anybody where the destination was. And they could guess, and some of them did pretty well, and some of them just had no clue. I was like, you need to get a globe, man. But anyway, because some of them were pretty obvious. But I would reveal in an epic tiger nab where that destination was. And through this, I thought, can I go bigger? Now that I had that plan, can I create more impact? And so I did. I created a parallel experience for sick kids at the local children's hospital so that they could go along virtually with the tiger and see everything the tiger sees without ever having to leave their beds. I called it the Little Tiger Team Explorers. I figured maybe 30 kids, no problem. But the request was for over 100, and there was no way that I could financially cover that. So I posted my dilemma up on social, and my friends and family showed up big time. They sponsored over 150 kids, and they all became Little Tiger Team Explorers. That's Lucas in the middle, and he was my best explorer along the whole trip. So off I went, around the world, Stonehenge to the Great Wall of China, Luke Skywalker's Island. You knew that was gonna happen. And then Harry Potter's hallways, because why not? And from the Taj Mahal to the Great Barrier Reef. I would like to point out, I almost died there, but it happens. And a whole bunch of places in between. But through this adventure, there was impact. To date, I've covered over 180,000 miles just for Tiger Tales alone. I've tiger nabbed hundreds of locations, and I've met people from all over the world. And if I could also say, a little off the record, I don't feel like I'm exactly a cuddly tiger, but I have been honored to receive more hugs than I care to count. And through all of this, impact. For me, when I look at my gifts, my passion, and my purpose, it's that my passion is really about adventures and exploring. I just happen to do it in a very creative way. That drove my purpose, which is really about connections. Nothing big, nothing grand. It's not a Jackie Robinson size effect, but it's still impact. Small ripples in the water that carry on. I like what the Dalai Lama has to say. If you think that you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. All right, I'd like to leave you with this. Be everything that you were designed to be. Your authentic, individualistic self. Create a path that is solely you. Forgive the bumps in the road, the wrong turns, bad decisions. They're all part of the journey. And in my opinion, I think they end up making the best memories eventually. Trust in your gifts, your talents. After all, your 4-year-old self would say, those are your superpowers. And you grew up to be exactly as you imagined back then that you would be. Go through purpose. Be intentional about your impact. And in the end, you can answer the question. Thank you.